How desperate was Meghan Markle to be famous? Well, apparently, according to Tom Bower's book, she basically spent seemingly all her money with the sole goal of intention of finding the right connections and being as famous as humanly possible without actually putting any talent or effort behind it. Yes, that is the picture Tom Bower paints in about the first 100 or so pages of his new book about Harry and Meghan. And so guys, I'm going to just share with you a couple of the insights that I saw and some of the huge warning signs about who Meghan is and her intentions and how really this whole thing with her and Harry will absolutely end in tears. But if you haven't been here to Royal News Network before, hello, my name is Brittany, and I talk about everything related to royals. So that's news, gossip, fashion, jewelry, television shows, movies, and history. I do it all right here. So if you want to subscribe, that would be fantastic. I just passed the 10,000 mark. I can't believe it. So thank you so much to all my new subscribers. And I'm so excited to share some of my insights about this book with you guys. So actually, it's not available officially here in the States yet. You can order it through some online intermediaries, but I actually went directly to the publisher, sharing with them that I wanted to cover this book on my channel, in addition to the fact that I wanted to interview Tom Bower, and they went ahead and sent me a digital copy. So what I'm going to show with you guys is some of the clips I found from the book. Thank goodness it's not degraded. If you haven't actually, I would assume most people haven't done this before, but if you actually review books, they actually usually send you a degraded copy digitally, so like the text is really bad. But thankfully, the text here is very sharp. So I'm going to share with you guys some of the excerpts I found just super interesting. And it's very revealing about who Meghan is and her intentions. And I can absolutely tell you 100% for sure, I am completely not convinced at all that she really loves Harry. I'm just really not, based on her history. And I'm convinced that if she's not already, at some point she's going to be shopping around for another richer husband while she's still married to Harry. Because that's what she did to her last boyfriend. So to kind of start off with, you know, they kind of went over in the beginning chapters about Meghan's childhood. It wasn't very long, and I really have enjoyed Tom Bower's book so far because it's just very kind of to the point. There's not a lot of flowery, expressive words. Meghan does that a lot in her writing, and it works kind of in speeches, but I hate it in writing. So I've actually really appreciated Tom Bower's book for that reason. I know some people that might not appeal to them quite as much, but to me, I really like it. So he kind of goes over her childhood and kind of debunks a bit of her narrative. You know, obviously he leaned a lot on her father, and you can question whether or not her father is telling the truth. I completely get that. But he kind of goes over her childhood and shares that, you know, race was never really an issue. She was well taken care of. She was popular at school. And kind of the big thing we found kind of in this first little bit is that even as a young, you know, kind of teenager, young woman, she wanted to be famous. And that's it. So now the picture I'm going to show here, honestly, it's racier without kind of the excerpts I put in here. She was clearly, these were promotional pictures. She was clearly not wearing a bra. And it's interesting because she's kind of tried to portray herself as somewhat demure and coy. And she's really not, based on these pictures that were kind of her first, you know, pictures as a foray into an actress. And yeah, so a couple of the ones I wanted to point out. Says, encouraged by Nikki Pretty's parents, so this was her childhood friend, the deep relationship between the two girls gave Nikki a unique insight into her friend. She always wanted to be famous. She just loved to be the center of attention. Growing up on film sets, noticed Pretty, Meghan made a bit of a star. We used to imagine her giving an Oscar. She used to practice announcing herself. I knew she was going to be in show business, real easy. And then it also says, as a treat, Thomas took her to the Emmy Awards ceremony when he was nominated for Best Lighting Director. After they walked down the red carpet, the 17-year-old said, "Daddy, I want to be famous like you one day." Like so many in town, Meghan loved glamour and celebrity. She wanted her dream to become a reality. He would do anything to help make her dream come true. And honestly, guys, throughout this book, Thomas Markle comes off very well so far, and obviously he cooperated with Tom Bower. It's very clear. And I think he was just, again, it's kind of about redirecting the narrative, because we all know that Meghan has lied about certain things. She has misled, she has exaggerated, etc., etc. And it sounded like her dad was kind of part of that in the Procter & Gamble story. So if you don't know, Meghan claims that it was her letter solely that led a multi-million-dollar company to change a multi-million-dollar campaign, and that she got a letter from Hillary Clinton about it. Turns out none of that was correct. And it was actually mostly a kind of made up account by Thomas Markle to kind of show his daughter how, that she really had this impact, which I don't think really helps someone young in their psyche. I think the best thing you can learn sometime is that people don't respond to you and you don't get your way all the time. That is a great lesson to learn for life. It really, really, really is. So Meghan, though, has been obsessed with this story and claims it's 100% true. Obviously, Vanity Fair, I did a video about this as well. They could not corroborate any of it. And so, but again, it's all about fame. This was very much on Meghan's mind since she was, really young. And so it goes on to talk about how Meghan went through high school, and she did pretty well in high school. And then obviously she went on to Northwestern University, which was a very, very good college. But the sole reason she went was that she wanted to make connections. And this is another theme we see throughout the whole book, which is that everybody to Meghan Markle is a way to get ahead. She's always about making the connection so she can make the next leap to the next more famous person. That is who Meghan Markle is. It's all about fame chasing and clout chasing for her. That's everything she does is based on that. And I've always debated whether or not she actually got a theater degree from Northwestern. It's been said it's been communications. Obviously, that was in the transcript. Thomas Bowers says that it was international relations and theater. I really doubt that because I think if Meghan had been very, very good in theater, she would have actually, she would have been in college plays. But we have no evidence she was actually in a college play. But I found this quote really, really interesting. So it says she also excelled in drama classes, not only because of obviously exceptional talent, but through hard work and professionalism. I kind of take a side eye on the professionalism and the, talent based on kind of what happened later. But anyways, perennially, she resisted the invitation from Professor Linda Gates, the head of the Voice program, to study acting in a theater. You can learn to be a great actress, Gates recalled telling Meghan, which basically says Meghan was not a great actress and that she needed to learn how to be a great actress. But I'm not sure she wanted to. Theater is where you learn to transform yourself and reach an audience 6 or 7 nights a week. A star actress like Meryl Streep trained in the theater. She can completely transform herself and go deep into a character. But Meghan was playing herself, a pretty girl who was personable and intelligent. Her strength was empathy, which I also call foul with. But anyways, throughout her life, Meghan never mentioned a theater performance she had seen or enjoyed. Like many aspiring cinema stars, she thought theater was dead. But perennially, friends could also not recall her gushing about an outstanding screen show. So again, I find that super fascinating to me that, she was kind of offered this chance. Hey, you can learn to do this professionally. You can learn to be a great actress. Meghan didn't care. Meghan didn't care at all about trying to perfect the craft and the, business she wanted to get into. And obviously it did definitely come back to bite her because Meghan is pretty, but she's not uniquely or rather interestingly pretty. She's just kind of average. And we'll see that throughout this whole introductory piece as well, is that nobody was interested. And, if you're not somebody like Angelina Jolie, who I find exceptionally gorgeous. She is just like, her bone structure, oh my gosh, that is just like, or Halle Berry is gorgeous as well. If you don't have kind of that very, very striking beauty, you need to make up for it with talent. And because there's a million pretty faces in Hollywood. If you don't have talent, you won't get very far. And Meghan, to really an extent, did not get very far. And the reason is kind of obvious. The reasons for her rejection were common. Bauer wrote, Hollywood was full of good-looking, ambitious actresses, but few had star quality. Critical to cinematic success was identity. Natural stars like Meryl Streep, Nicole Kidman, and Rachel Weisz project a gravity onto the big screen to lock in the audience's eyes. Meghan lacked charisma. On screen, she generated no magic. Although she was undoubtedly attractive, directors found her unexciting and ordinary. The audience's emotions and curiosity, they believed, would not be excited by her appearance. Like the vast majority of wannabes, Meghan portrayed her own wants and needs and not the requirements of the role. She was her own person. She could not convincingly become another person. She never played a part which she could adapt to herself. Lacking natural mystery, she remained a B actress struggling with one-liners that might end up on the cutting room floor. And again, to me, that's exceptionally telling about who Meghan is she can't play anybody else but herself, because she can't really, she can't act. And she doesn't really have, even though she's gone to private school, even though she's gone to a very well-respected university, she lacks depth. And if you don't have depth, then I think that does kind of make you uninteresting as an actor. Obviously, there's some people who are dumb as rocks and who, dropped out of school at like middle school age, who have gone on to become very successful actors. I mean, there's absolutely, but I think there is an element, you have to be either an exceptionally creative person or, you have to have you have to be somewhat intellectual in some way. You have to have something that brings interest to you, something that brings you a bit of gravity that other people just might not have. And Meghan just did not have that and didn't care to have any of that, in my opinion. And so she obviously struggled with many one-liners. Her dad got her a job on like a very short role on General Hospital. And so she bounced from thing to thing. And her credits were very, very brief and very uninteresting. And she was basically just kind of the hot girl. And that was kind of it. She didn't have any roles of gravity at all. And she kept trying and trying and trying. And she did finally wind up with the role of Rachel Zane. And when you read through this, what struck me, especially going back through and finding my quotes a second time, is that Meghan kind of became obsessed with this role. And really, she only got the role because Rachel Zane was kind of somewhat like her. And that because that's the only thing she can act is herself. She can't really do anything else. And so she was able to act this role because it was basically not modeled after her, but she found, I think, her personality fit well with Rachel's. And so she moved, obviously, to Canada for this role. Initially, it was shot in New York, but then they had to move it to Toronto to save money. And Tom Bauer mentioned a couple of salaries for her role, which I find a bit excessive, but I actually, at the same time, I think a ton of Meghan's money went to self-promotion. But here is what it said. And obviously she started her relationship with Trevor as well. He was a producer in the Hollywood area. Like her, not very successful, had a couple of things, most of them bombed. And they were just struggling in Hollywood together without any recognition. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody in Hollywood does that. But you have to have a certain, part of it's luck. A lot of it's nepotism. So that Meghan did not succeed in Hollywood is striking, really, because she should have done much better. So, for example, Blake Lively, who I love her fashion sense, and I really enjoyed, she did a Vogue thing talking about her greatest fashion looks, and it's actually really interesting to hear her talk. She would have been an amazing stylist, I think, because she has that brain to think that way. So I really appreciate her thought. I don't think she's a great actress, but I appreciate her thought process as somebody who really enjoys and loves and understands fashion very well. Very, very interesting. Anyways, Blake's dad was an actor. I can't remember if her mom was an actor. I think she was an acting teacher. And her sister was an actress. Her sister was on Twin Peaks. And so, she had this huge connection. Obviously, she's the biggest star from her family by far. But she's had this, obviously this connection to the industry, which may not be totally apparent, but definitely helped her get her feet in the door. And it didn't help that she did get a nose job, probably got a boob job. And she just has an exceptional eye for fashion, which I think really makes her stand out among a sea of actresses, which Meghan's just does not. But when she was in Toronto, obviously she got a real taste of freedom and she had a lot of financial security and independence, which she didn't have before because she was relying on her dad and her husband. And so it says, Trevor did not notice that his wife, free from the constraints of her past in Los Angeles, avoided the daily compromises of marriage. Liberated by her financial security, Meghan began to identify with her character, Rachel Zane. Wearing Tom Ford pencil skirts, speaking about contracts and clients, she was becoming like Zane, an empowered, sassy, professional woman. Inevitably, her relationship with Trevor began to change. And so again, Meghan overly fixated on Rachel Zane. She thought Rachel Zane was her and that she was Rachel. And so there's a couple more comments to that extent, but it kind of shows you as well, because Meghan was so desperate to be famous and had no desire to actually develop any skills to actually help her get ahead, she overly attached, I think, to the character of Rachel, who had ambitions beyond just like being famous. She wanted to be a lawyer. That takes time, that takes energy, that takes dedication, that takes intelligence, a lot of things. Meghan is exceptionally shallow, in my opinion. She only wanted fame for fame's sake. She didn't want to actually become a great actress and become famous. If she had actually worked on her craft, she actually could have become a very well-respected actress. Potentially, I don't know. Maybe she still could have done it, but I would have infinitely more respect for her if she had. But she lacked the talent and charisma, and then she, even if she did lack the talent, she even tried to make herself better. And people noticed. Nobody would have thought she would be married to Prince Harry and have this huge platform now, because honestly, she wasn't interesting. So obviously, once she started getting money, she immediately kind of contracted Sunshine Sachs with the sole purpose of making her as famous as humanly possible, as quickly as possible, doing whatever they could. And so this was one instance where, she wanted to be a chef or like have a chef's show, but she couldn't cook, apparently. So it says, the only good news was that Nikki Eade, a fixer paid by Sunshine Sachs to book her appearance at the TV gala, had also arranged for her to meet Jonathan Schultz, a successful and likable TV agent. Okay, by the way, my pronunciation of things is terrible, so please excuse my pronunciation of names. Just putting that out there right now. I want to be a TV celebrity chef like Gordon Ramsay, Meghan told Schultz in his office. Or, she volunteered, she would be happy to appear in any other non-scripted TV show. Schultz was excited. She was charming, good-looking, and admired by the small audience for Suits. He was unaware that while Meghan liked eating good food, her cooking skills were limited. Other than blender-made vegetable soup, her specialties were plain pasta, roast chicken, barbecued hamburgers, and steak, which are very easy to make, by the way. The hamburgers and steak, pretty easy to make in the States. The rest of her food was bought ready-made. Rather than cook, she imagined fronting a TV program to tour the world of tasting food. A short video of her tasting pickles in Brooklyn for Aura TV exposed her limitations. There was neither magic nor magnetism. So again, she kept pushing these different things for herself, but she never, I think of, what's her name? Is it Rachel's? No. Oh, what's her name? Rachel Ray, who does the cooking shows. She started off doing 5-minute cooking recipes. So none of what she did was really groundbreaking, but she made it really simple and easy for people to understand. So she had an angle to it. Meghan never tried to create an angle for herself. She just thought she was pretty and she should do things. That's essentially what she wanted. And the other thing I found interesting is apparently Meghan was rather envious of other women. He says, there was another unseen characteristic. Meghan suffered terrible envy of the other women's health, looks, and social success. What at school and in Hollywood was classed as healthy ambition had metamorphosized into jealousy. Increasingly, envy covered so much of her life. And, we see this in the royal family as well. She was incredibly envious of Catherine, but that's the role she signed up for. She signed up to be second fiddle the whole time. I mean, that's what a monarchy is. There's only can be one person at the top. Everybody else is down the line. It's just how they all work. The British royal family is absolutely no exception to that rule. So it was rather interesting that Meghan was just, I think, exceptionally envious. And I think also too, I've seen Jessica Mulroney and, obviously on her Instagram and stuff. Her Instagram is active again because I know she took it off. Jessica Mulroney is obviously in that picture I showed with that excerpt of the book, and she was Meghan's friend. She was at the wedding. and she had this falling out due to a social media thing. But I wonder if especially it was much easier for Meghan to cut Jessica off because they had a falling out over the social media kerfluffle. Somebody said that Jessica was being kind of racist and bullying towards a woman of color. So Meghan dropped her allegedly. I mean, we don't know entirely if that's true, but I actually honestly wonder if it was easy for Meghan to drop Jessica, because Jessica has a phenomenal figure. She really does. She works out a ton. She looks fantastic, and Meghan struggled to lose the weight with both of her babies, and no shame in that at all. But I wonder too if that enviousness, you know, kind of made it easier for her to cut Jessica out because she could not compete with Jessica, you know, both of them post-baby. I just wonder if that's the case. So going back, again, Meghan's obsession with the character of Rachel is something that I think didn't really have anything to her, if that makes sense. Because her ambitions and everything she wanted was so shallow, she classed onto somebody who was, you know, I think more accomplished than she was. It says uppermost in her mind was her image. Convinced that she was on the cusp of international celebrity, she had become preoccupied with Rachel Zane's character. Constantly, she absorbed Aaron Korsh's vision for Zane, the feisty opportunist with the extraordinary manipulative skills. To her delight, Korsh inserted her own personal interest into the scripts. Zane became a foodie. He also agreed to limit the number of love scenes with her dressed in just a bra. So she really clasped on, and she kind of almost metamorphosized into her character, which I don't think is a very healthy thing. You know, as an actor, you're supposed to be separate from your character, not become your character. Now, obviously, Meghan didn't become a lawyer. I'd actually have respect for her if she tried to go to law school. She didn't try to do that, but she became so attached to her character that she started, you know, adopting traits of her, and those traits were, you know, good, but I also think it shows again that she lacks character herself. Meghan, she has no depth of character because she has to borrow it from somebody else. Korsh also introduced Meghan to the most expensive clothes, calling Meghan Little Fox. Jolie Andrietta, the series costume designer, dressed the actress in Dior, Prada, Burberry, and similar labels. For many viewers, the focus of the series became the outfits. Meghan credited Andrietta with influencing her understanding of fashion, especially the power of white shirts, Tom Ford pencil skirts, and the importance of the fit. To her disappointment, Andrietta said that in an interview that Meghan was not her favorite actress to dress. And honestly, I think it's clear as well that Meghan just really didn't take any of that advice because she looks terrible now. I think actually
Tom Bower's explosive book reveals Meghan Markle's desperate quest for fame. From skipping acting training to relying on looks, networking, and money, Meghan chased stardom. And even after marrying Prince Harry, her eyes remain on the Hollywood dream.
Pencil skirts and button downs actually do better for her. And honestly, looking at her latest paparazzi shot of her dressed in Dior Bermuda shorts with a white shirt that's oversized and Manolo Blahnik pumps, Andrietta, I'm sure, is like, I did not teach you that. That's not what I taught you. And Meghan just makes that insane. Those shorts are apparently $400. And, you know, I'm sure that whole outfit costs well over $1,000. Looking at that going, you pulled down Dior. You didn't, you know, increase. I mean, you look so mundane. It looks like something you got from Ann Taylor. I just can't get that up. It's just so crazy. Also, anything critical alarmed Meghan. Trawling the internet, she read that a handful of viewers had protested that Zayn was about to start an affair. She was alarmed that she, Meghan Markle, was personally blamed. Her own reputation, she feared, was threatened by her portrayal in Suits as an unfaithful woman. Worried about the potential backlash, she beseeched Korsh to end the storyline and the affair. Korsh agreed, aware that he was not only writing a good story, but also shaping Meghan's real-life character and personality. Strangely, Meghan would later claim, I don't read any press. I haven't even read the press for Suits. And we all know that's, of course, a lie. But again, it shows that she's so worried about her character reflecting on her. And I get that actors do worry about that, but that's part of your job as an actor. Like, you are not Rachel Zane, and Rachel Zane is not you, honey. Like, I worry that you think that. I genuinely worry that you think that. And it just goes to show, again, she had an unhealthy attachment to her character and could not separate her character from herself. And you got to think as well, this is Meghan's only long-term role. She can only do things that reflect her. So she probably to a certain extent thought she is Rachel Zane. Just think about that. And so obviously, Meghan, once she got this starring role on Suits and she got a lot more press attention, Meghan wanted to do anything to get up the upper echelon. She was obsessed with finding something else for her to do, something else that could bring her attention in any way, shape, or form. And so she went on this USO tour, which is USO tours are, celebrities go and try to cheer up troops on the front line. And this is what people thought of Meghan going. Led by the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Martin Dempsey, the service families at every stop were puzzled. Meghan's biographical description, mentioning that she was actively involved in the socio-political arena, that she had worked at the American Embassy in Buenos Aires, and that she now works closely with the United Nations Women, made no impression on the audiences. Few knew her name or understood her peppery speech about Suits and looked pained when asked to sing, especially White Christmas. So I love White Christmas. That is a great song. It's a great movie too if you've never seen it. But there's also a video of Meghan looking super, super awkward with the rest of the USO team. And apparently she just didn't make an impression on any of them. Because I think Dave Bautista was actually, who was in Guardians of the Galaxy, was on that trip, and he made no connection with her, and neither did anybody else. But Meghan, her sole thing, everything she did was to try to raise her profile and be more famous. But she didn't actually try to improve herself. She just wanted to be famous. That was it. Anything she did was to try to add the tick, try to raise her profile, try to get more people invested in her rather than her trying to invest in the world. Because the people who stay famous the longest are people who actually have something to contribute. If you buy your fame and infamy, you kind of don't last that long. So obviously Meghan also went to Rwanda. Again, it was part of this whole thing to try to build her profile, and apparently she went there, and this has been reported already from the book, went there with like a suitcases loads of clothes to have basically a giant photo shoot in a scene of immense suffering. I don't know who does that. I've actually been to a refugee camp in Africa before. And I mean, it's unbelievably humbling to see people who live in mud huts in especially incredibly hot weather. And when I went there, obviously, we were there as part of a team and we were greeted, and they did kind of this little dance skit for me. And I'm like, I felt so uncomfortable because it's like, why are you celebrating, kind of commemorating my visit when you guys are the ones who need the greatest support, the greatest attention? Because I mean, it's not me. I don't have anything really to offer you. And I'm so amazed by what you do. This single mom, her husband, I can't remember if she knew he had been killed. I think he was just missing. And she had 5 children, and she's in this refugee camp all by herself, having to tend her own property. There's no lavatories really. I mean, it is just an immensely humbling thing. But Meghan had the opportunity to ask refugees that, and the replies were barely listed. Back before nightfall in Kigali, the capital, she recorded on her Instagram account about the trip. "This type of work feeds my soul." She did not appear to be troubled by the contrast that a short distance away, impoverished people barely survived. "My life shifts from refugee camps to red carpets," she wrote on the TIG. "I choose them both because these worlds, in fact, coexist." And again, it just shows the narcissism, the lack of empathy. I know he said, one of her talents was empathy. It's really not. She doesn't care. She really doesn't seem to care about anybody but herself. So again, she also, because she wasn't really making headway in Los Angeles at all, nobody cared. And Canada, she felt like she had outgrown it. She was trying London. That was her next stop. And so she went to London, and the news in London was disappointing, however. Despite Nelthcorth Crown's incessant pitch to clients for speaking events, highlighting Meghan as a strong entrepreneurial fluent woman of substance, she was rejected. The reason was always the same. She was unknown, and so was Suits. Without a profile, Meghan was told she could not attract British media. attention and therefore could not be hired for engagements. Meghan did not hide her frustration. And again, I think this goes back to she had nothing to offer. She's not a great actress of influence, and she refused to actually, she paid people to get her to speak. So people weren't asking her. She was paying people to get to speak. Now, I don't know about you, but generally you want to be asked, not pitched. And I know people do pitch and help, but if you raise your profile up enough and if you do enough good works, people reach out to you rather than you having to beg them. And Meghan didn't do herself any favors because constantly she was given immense opportunities and she floundered them. Like in this case with the Elle interview that she was supposed to do on her trip to Malta. And she decided instead that they paid for the trip and everything. And she was going to research her ancestry. Apparently it didn't exist in Malta. There was really no family connection to Malta at all. If it was, I'd have to look again, but I believe it was very cursory, like somebody lived there briefly before moving on. Like she has no family roots in Malta, but that was her pitch for this trip, is that she had family roots in Malta. And then she spent this whole time trying to kind of emulate it a bit and then didn't talk about any of it, apparently. Did Meghan Nelthorpe Crown later wonder ever intend to look for her ancestors? She doubted it. So this is a woman, kind of an agent, who was trying to get Meghan work. Everything she does is carefully curated and forensically planned. The sensitive soul searching for her roots. During the trip, visiting restaurants and vineyards, Kurt Arrigo, a well-known local photographer hired by the Maltese Tourist Authority, photographed Meghan in numerous locations with endless changes of clothes. During those days, Meghan spoke to Gina about branding herself as a foodie, as a beauty and fashion expert, and as an advocate of wellness. During her time in Malta, she did not speak about race, politics, nor her father, and never mentioned Serena Williams and all the other celebrities she claimed to be friends with on her website. On the return to London, Meghan told Nelthorpe Crown, "You're really special to me. We have a special friendship." By then, Nelthorpe Crown admitted to herself, "I had fallen under Meghan's spell, as everyone did. Not only did she exude warmth and sincerity, but she made you feel like you were the only person in the world that mattered. She's a girl. And we had shared many stories." Unfortunately for the Maltese Tourist Authority, Meghan's published article in Elle made no mention of Malta. The island's restaurants, wines, and beaches were forgotten. Arrigo's photographs were not used. And again, I just find that incredibly, insanely tacky. Like, if you were asked to write for something, and I've written a lot, and I try to honor people as best I can. I can't, if I interview somebody and I can't use everything, that's part of the business. But I always try to honor people's times as best as I can, and that they paid for her to go on this trip. They paid for her basically to promote Malta and her family connections there. And she just like, that's just so incredibly unprofessional. So I think, again, Meghan's also shooting herself in the foot this whole time by not doing the things, like the simple things she needed to do, which was pay attention, honor her commitments, honor her obligations, and not be difficult. But throughout all of this, I didn't, put all this in, but she, started to obviously become very, very demanding and very, very entitled about that, she was this star. And she wanted to promote herself as obviously a great advocate for women as well, but this really was a facade, and I think this was very, very telling. Meghan's cause could not have been helped by giving the impression to some people that while she did speak about politics, philosophy, and ideology, her apparent all-consuming passion for the empowerment of women was in reality focused on self-promotion and the empowerment of Meghan Markle. Whatever the reason, Neamaro, who was connected with the UN, again, my pronunciation names leaves a lot to be desired. I totally own that. Refused Meghan's request to be promoted to ambassador. Meghan resigned from he for she and cut her ties with UN women. Yet remarkably, despite the unpublicized split, she continued to cite the publicity her UN women experience as proof of her philanthropy. Outsiders never glimpsed the truth about the rupture or the reasons. So again, everybody, she is excellent at networking. excellent at gaining contacts. But every person she came in contact with, yeah, she would love bomb all of them because she wanted something from that. She wanted everyone. I mean, there's not actual bodies, but literally there's kind of bodies left in the wake of Meghan Markle because it was just stepping on one person over the next with her Aquazzura pumps. Get that connection there to this pump she stole after a photo shoot. So every person that she met, she was stepping on them to try to get to the next person, because it was all about, again, climbing that ladder, because she couldn't do it on her own. She had to just climb and climb and climb and climb, and she wouldn't put any of the effort into it. So really the whole thing, even though she's achieved this great success, it's actually exceptionally hollow. But, you know, at this point still though, despite everything she did, none, however, could provide the breakthrough she wanted beyond Canada. Hollywood fame remained elusive. And at the time, she was also still dating Corey, who was a chef. And apparently, and this was, again, throughout the whole thing. So Corey, she didn't really want to honor or acknowledge him on her website because really she wanted him for the connection he could give her in the local Toronto community. And their relationship had basically run its course, and she was basically fishing for a rich, wealthy guy to go along with. Corey McElroy, who was a golf guy, and she did the ALS challenge with him. The ice bucket challenge. I mean, Bauer basically says the two of them had an affair, and, you know, basically shows that Meghan was actively fishing for another man while she was with Corey, just actively going to London, trying to make the best connection she can, because her sole reason was to find not love, but a rich, wealthy, influential husband, because she can't do something like that by herself. Corey was wary of Meghan's prima donna behavior. Entering restaurants, she demanded a special table, the entitlement of every famous actress, and her name dropping whenever she returned from New York was insufferable. "You're not Nicole Kidman," he snapped at her. So it was very much that their relationship was basically completely on the outs at this point, that they were going to break up. But still, you actually should be an adult and break up with the person you're dating before jumping to the next person. That's just common courtesy. And this I found really, really funny. And again, it shows Meghan is not remarkable. Nobody who met her when she was trying on the upbeat, really, I mean, some people fell under her spell, but a lot of people just thought she was not an interesting person. And again, she did nothing to make herself interesting. She did the flashy things, but she never did the deeper things, you know, the research, the reading that she needed to do to actually make these things happen, in my opinion. So she did this picture between Liam Neeson and Fitzpatrick, this guy from New York, who she kind of used to make connections, kind of inroads with Clinton and some of the political set. To her misfortune, the badly lit photo failed to portray her beauty. Moreover, it spoke volumes for Meghan's insignificance that the Hollywood star would later insist that he had never met Meghan. Despite the photograph, his memory about Meghan was blank. Meghan remained forgettable. But she did not forget the event. Hanging out among the famous in Clinton's world was an incentive to move on. And again, her sole focus was to be famous in Hollywood. That's all Meghan has ever cared about, is being famous in Hollywood. Even though she achieved fame in Canada, it wasn't enough. Even though now she's achieved fame on the international stage, it's still not enough. She wants that recognition from Hollywood. That is what's driving her. She wants the people who denied her the success she thought she deserved to recognize her as, you know, this wonderful person now. And so you kind of see this here. The word brand triggered Meghan's interest. Okay, she agreed. But I don't want to stay long. I want to go back to Los Angeles. I want to be successful in Los Angeles, my home. There was another incentive. Moving to London would solve the Corey problem. The final break from him was delayed. So again, it was all about Hollywood, Hollywood, Hollywood. Didn't matter about anything else. She wanted Hollywood, Hollywood, Hollywood. That's what Meghan was. And so, but as, you know, her fame and profile grew, her demands grew increasingly wild. Even though she was essentially an unknown, unverified, untested commodity, she was still demanding to be treated like basically Nicole Kidman. And so just for a last little quote here, it says, "The impression was of a person satisfied with herself. She rarely confessed to a lack of self-confidence. Her self-criticism was limited to cosmetic superficialities. The Tig never hinted at an intellectual curiosity or a hinterland. She was never heard to suffer any relentlessness to beat a new challenge. The biggest influence on her life so far appears to have been the character Aaron Korsh created, Rachel Zane, an ambitious, fluent, sexy, shallow fashionista with a passion for food. And again, you guys, I think that encapsulates Meghan in so many ways. She is shallow, she is vain, she is self-confident, but also deeply insecure. And despite her flamboyantness and her claims of intelligence, she really actually hasn't done any of the intellectual work necessary to actually be somebody who is kind of considered wise, or somebody who can speak into issues on an intellectual level. And I noticed this as well because she uses a lot of word salad. So she tries to use this very flowery speech. And when I see people like that, it reminds me that, you know, sometimes people put a bunch of words around things to try to make what they're sound very intellectual when it's really not. It's really basic, very surface basic. And that is who Meghan is. She is uninspiring. She is not noteworthy really to anybody she met at this point. She was ambitious, relentless, narcissistic, and demanding, but she really just did not have any of the skills really that she needed to really break through in Hollywood. And she refused to acknowledge this fact and refused to actually work on herself and make herself more appealing to people. And so we see this now. To me, there's nothing appealing about Meghan Markle. She's just a fake persona that has nothing really of intellectual ability to add to anything. And that's what I've always kind of seen her as. I haven't seen anything that makes me think and go, wow, that was really encapsulating. And not that really Catherine has done that all that much either, but Meghan demands that we see her as this huge intellectual without actually doing any of the necessary work to make herself that. I mean, I don't know what her grades were in Northwestern, and, you know, perhaps she did exceptionally well, I don't know. But she, again, this whole facade that she created, that she captured Harry with, was really entirely a facade. There was nothing true about it. It was all manufactured. And really at the end of the day, she bought her way to Harry. I wasn't going to add this, and now I remember why I was going to add this. So this is kind of the last quote. And again, it tells me where, because I always didn't think her net worth was $5 million, but apparently this is where it went. So it says, back at the hotel, Meghan had a new demand. So this was after she met Harry and before kind of the relationship blew up. Once her relationship with Harry was known and she spent more time in London, she explained she would need a special media relations team. I want you to handle it, Gina, said Meghan. Since she had no money, she continued, and the kudos would be immeasurable, she expected her agent to work without payment. Gina politely refused. She was not a PR agency and lacked the staff and expertise. However, she could promise Meghan that once the Harry connection was known, her commercial appeal, especially in America, would increase. Meghan was insulted by Gina's rejection of her proposal. And again, that goes to show that apparently, was Meghan broke? I mean, you could kind of, it seems that that's what he's saying. And I could totally see that. She was paying Sunshine Sachs $7,500 a month. And I'm sure as she increased that and the relentless drive to be famous kept going and going and going, she kept paying them more and more money. But again,
Tom Bower's explosive book reveals Meghan Markle's desperate quest for fame. From skipping acting training to relying on looks, networking, and money, Meghan chased stardom. And even after marrying Prince Harry, her eyes remain on the Hollywood dream.